Exciting times. Today, we're in for a treat. It's Daniel Mann, YouTube spearfishing legend, and my mate, Daniel Mann. I really enjoyed this chat. We get into a whole bunch of stuff. If you are new here for the first time, welcome to the Spearo podcast. My name's Isaac, aka Shrek. I'm the host of the Spearo podcast. It's interviews with spearfishing experts, authorities, and characters from around the world. But don't just take my word for it. Here is a review from You Know It in the US. He says, I've been crushing this podcast and really enjoy each interview. Best information by the most responsible and professional Spearo. Shrek is a great host. Keeps me wanting more. Thanks, Spearo podcast. I can't wait to buy that recipe book. Talking about that recipe book, I'm going to get there in just a second. But today with Daniel Mann, we have a massive chat. We talk about Europe as a spearfishing destination, some of the adventures he's been on since he's been living over there in the UK. We talk about YouTube and specifically algorithmic changes and some of the ideas and opinions we have on it. And Daniel talks about how he's grown and made efforts with his YouTube channel. If you want to check out some of the best videos going, go to Daniel Mann on YouTube. He engages with every single person that comments, and he makes huge efforts to make really good, high quality videos. The storytelling's on point, and he's very, very good at what he does. I cannot shine him on enough with regards to his YouTube channel. Check it out and subscribe if you haven't already, and keep up to date with his with what he's up to. But right at the start of this interview, we get straight into a massive debate and discussion really about Reelguns, their application and use and safety concerns. And it's probably about a good 15 or 20 minute chat. And I really enjoyed it, particularly with some of the listener inquiries. Shout out to Django Taylor 11 on Instagram over there in WA. But anyway, back to 99 Spearo Recipes. It's ticking along really well. And if you go to noobspearo.com/99 recipes, you can go and check out our Kickstarter campaign. It'll redirect you right there. Go through the campaign and have a look at what we've made here. It's a crowdsourced seafood recipe book from the spearfishing community for the spearfishing community. There's a massive amount of recipes. There's more than 140 actually. If you want to learn how to smoke fish, there's a guide to how to start hot smoking fish. There's a really comprehensive guide there put together by Jai Gibbons at Spearo Chef on caring for your catch. I can guarantee you're going to learn something in this cookbook, and it's going to inspire you and help you reach that next level and make even better meals for your friends and family. So that's the whole purpose of it. Again, if you want to go and check it out, go to noobspearo.com/99 recipes. Or you can go to Kickstarter and just type in 99 Spearo Recipes and that'll come up. One of my favorite pledge reward levels, and we've moved 3 of these so far, is a limited edition knife pack. And the knife pack comes with 2 engraved Victory knives. One's 22 centimeter straight filleting knife. One's a 15 centimeter knife. There's a high grade sharpening steel in there. There's fish scaler, bone tweezers, and it all comes in a custom canvas case. And with that, you get 4 live master classes. So I'm going to do like 1 hour cooking classes, basically, with some of the awesome chefs, Spearo chefs that we've had in this book, like Jai Gibbons, like Spencer Allen to last week's interview. Check it out. In this reward pack, you get the knives, you get the live masterclasses, you get a hardcover copy of the book, you get an apron, a stubby holder. If you don't know what that is, you've got to go and check it out at noobspearo.com/99 recipes. Guys, check it out. Thanks for all the support so far. I'm super stoked with how this campaign's going. But anyway, let's get into today's interview with Daniel Mann. This one's off the chain. Here we go. I love a good awkward story, and to go with that awkward story, Manscaped have engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th generation lawnmower trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. I now feel confident shaving my boys. You can get hold of this deal as well. You get 20% off and free shipping with the code NOOBSPEARO in one word, NOOBSPEARO in one word at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with the free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the code NOOBSPEARO, one word. Unlock your confidence. Always use the right tools for the job. Get some smooth balls with Manscaped. This offer is a literal no-brainer if you're a Spearo in Australia. Go to adreno.com.au. If you buy or spend over $200, you can use the code NOOBSPEARO to save $20 on every purchase over $200. Hook in, my friends, at adreno.com.au. Take advantage of a massive range of equipment. They've got flat rate shipping across Australia. hassle-free returns policy, and a price beat guarantee on any Australian spearfishing equipment price. Check them out at adreno.com.au. Use the code NoobSpearo to save $20 on every purchase over $200. You can use that in-store or online at adreno.com.au. Have you visited neptonics.com? If you are building spear guns, I bet you have. They have got a huge assortment of top quality components for gun builders. Not only that, but they sell all sorts of equipment. They are the one-stop shop for all spearfishing essentials, particularly in the USA. They also have free shipping on orders over $99 in the USA. And a great deal for noobers today, you can save 10% off your entire order when you use the code NOOB10 at checkout. Go to neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10, 10% off.
Hi, I'm Isaac Daly. Welcome back to the Noob Spearo podcast, where we interview experts, authorities, and characters from the spearfishing world. Today, I'm your host, Isaac Daly.
And I'm Daniel Mann, calling in from London. They used to call me Nana Arms, but now I'm just plain old Spanner.
Now I'm just another person. I'm just going to shut my window.
All right, all good.
All right, back at it again. Round three.
Round three. Is it your third time on the Noob Spearo podcast?
It is my third time on the Noob Spearo podcast.
Well, welcome back, Daniel Mann, Noob Spearo community. This is Daniel Mann. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's got the world's best spearfishing YouTube channel. Just like we have the world's best spearfishing podcast, we only have the world's best here on the podcast. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me yet again. I'm surprised people aren't sick of hearing me.
Nah, man.
I'm not sure if they're not sick of hearing me or not, but here I am.
You're super popular. And love your channel, man. That recent video you did on Reels is very much in line with today's conversation. I actually had a message this week. But anyway, fill people in on who you are and where you live in these days.
My name is Daniel Mann, and I live in London in the United Kingdom. I've lived here just shy of 6 years, a lot of my late 20s, all of my 30s. And I used to live in Brisbane, but I just moved here in 2015 because wanted to change, didn't want to white picket fencing kids like everybody else seemed to be doing. And I thought it would be for 6 months, and here I am 6 years later.
You wanted to go to like various parts of Europe and see like volcanic eruptions and film whales and do all sorts of cool film projects and collaborate with some of the best in the business. And you've very much done that, Dan. Like going for your YouTube channel, you look like a man of leisure.
Well, that's the fake world, isn't it? The internet. That's not what I do all the time. When I moved here, I was still doing electrical work for a couple of years and got very, very sick of that and hassled somebody I knew from Australia. I met her randomly through some friends again at a curry night, and begged, pleaded, and said, "Can I carry some equipment for you? Do whatever." And then randomly 3 months later, her boss called me up and said, "Oh, we need someone to edit some stuff. Can you edit?" I said, "Sure." So then snowballed. One thing led to another. I stuck around, freelance for a bit for them, and then eventually got to a tipping point where it was go to Timor-Leste and film blue whales for a month or have a stable electrical job. So I hung up the electrical pliers and went on that job for a month and filmed there. Learned a lot about myself, about whales, about Timor-Leste, and then came back and have been doing video work full-time since.
That roll of the dice that you had where you decided to go to Timor-Leste and film the whales, it reminded me of a quote that I read that Joe Rogan talks about all the time. He says, most men live lives of quiet desperation, and and very few of us actually go and just have the balls to just go and do what we want. And sometimes I think it's about you got to take that roll of the dice. So good on you, Dan. And I've loved following along on your journey. And recent video, I want to get into this Reelgun chat.
Straight into it. Straight into something controversial.
Mate, let's get straight.
Shouldn't be controversial, but some people like to make it controversial, don't they?
Yeah. Well, there's some old school chat and there's some old school wisdom, but then there needs to be some thoughts about application and stuff, I think. So I'll just preface this chat. Django Taylor 11 on Instagram reached out and said, "Hey mate, I've noticed in lots of your podcasts you strongly recommend using a float instead of a reel, which I agree with, but you don't really take into account that lots of divers, especially from where I'm from, see this and go, oh, okay, no reel. But where we dive, we can't actually use floats much as they just go out without a reel or a float, which is actually more dangerous as they always try to just drag the fish up. And I've seen a friend do this with big Samson fish and it almost went really badly. I agree with you about sharing awareness on the safety of floats, but I think it could possibly be good if you highlighted to your audience that if you're diving in areas where a float is impossible, like where we dive in Margaret River, where the ground is really cavey, that you should just use a reel just so you can get to the surface without losing your gun." Sorry, mate, for the huge paragraph. But I thought it was really good timing, actually. He sent this, I think a day or 2 days maybe before your YouTube came out. And sometimes it's like there's a topical flavor of the month in the spearfishing world. I guess that's the thing that we should be covering in the Noob Spearo podcast and have a real frank and honest discussion about Reelguns. Dan, your video came out I think 2 days after I read this. So I thought I'm going to pester him about this because we already had a chat.
Pester me about it, my somewhat – I tried to be quite – diplomatic and factual about Reelguns. Bottom of the line, if you can't afford to replace your gun, don't put a reel on it because you can lose them really, really easy. Great pun there that I didn't make in my video about really, really easy to lose a reel. Anyway, swear I'm not a dad yet. Yeah, so I think a lot of people will see people using a reel and go, that's obviously the best thing for it. But I use a reel mostly because of the terrain I'm diving here in the UK a lot. There's a lot of kelp. A lot of the stuff that I dive locally is very cavey and it's just very impractical to dive with a float line. But there's also other times where, I wouldn't use anything but a float line. For instance, if I'm trying to shoot something really, really big, because it's just, you've got a higher chance of landing the fish and not just injuring it or losing equipment if you use the right tool for the job, I guess. It's kind of like not using a 5-wood on the green versus, or using a putter at the tee off sort of thing for golf, if you want to relate it to some sort of practical application of another sport. But there is various dangers of using a reel gun. I've nearly lost guns a couple times. I've had to leave one on the bottom before. I just spent 3 months making a spear gun, nice carbon fiber spear gun that I'd made. And then I shot and just my flopper hooked onto the bottom and then my shooting line got tangled in the rubbers a little bit and then the reel doesn't unspool. And I had to leave it there because I like air. And that's the danger that happens with a reel gun is people think, I'll just yank it a little bit or I'll hold on to it or I'll try and do something else or, struggle a little bit too long. And if you've pushed it on a big dive, that can be the difference between that dive being successful or being a very tragic dive. Yeah.
I think one thing you did really well in the video is you ran people through the sort of the basic setup. So, for a person that's
float and float line, rig line, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So for a person that's brand new to spearfishing, they're trying to just work out because we take it for granted. We understand what the different setups are. When you've been spearfishing a few years, you've generally seen all the different styles and applications of, float line or rig line and float. And then you've seen breakaway setups, you've seen reel guns. But these are all very different things for very different applications. We've obviously tried to push the 15-meter, 50-foot sort of float line apprenticeship because I think in the first few years you've got enough going on without having to work out the logistics of a reel. And then if you have a jam up and you're out there for the first time with a reel gun, you're already not really equipped to deal with it. It's I don't know, whatever your spear gun's worth, maybe $700 or $800. Potentially going to lose that.
Not here. Gear's way cheaper here. You can buy a Rob Allen for 150 quid here. But anyway, that's taxes and that sort of stuff. But yeah, for somebody that's just getting into the sport, whether it's a $200 gun, $500 gun, whatever. It's still something you don't really, it's not a natural instinct to let that go on the bottom, particularly if you can't get back to the bottom. Whereas, for you and I, if we're hunting at a reasonable depth and you drop a gun on the bottom and there's no current, you've got a pretty good chance of getting your gun back, you're not going to be too worried. Or if you've got a dive buddy there to, go down and get it for you or something like that. But yeah, like you say, there's so many different things going on. And I've only just realized this in recent years because I've dived with some guys that are only new to spearfishing, or I've taken some friends out. And all the things that you and I think as, what is it on your 4-point
just
thing?
Self-evidence. Unconscious competence. Yeah.
Unconscious incompetence. They're at that first level of unconscious incompetence. Whereas you and I look at that and go, what are you doing? But I've only just learned in recent times about the things that aren't so obvious to people, because I've sort of not forgotten the things that I'm doing, but forgotten what it's like to not know the things that I do. And that's why I did make that video, because, for most people, well, for me particularly, I think, I just choose my equipment based on what I'm doing. But for some people, they don't know why they're choosing equipment, and that can get them in a sticky situation. And I would highly recommend anybody that's just starting out spearfishing, first or second or third years spearfishing, just get a float and a float line and a spear gun on the end, because you can't lose anything. You're less likely to get hit by boats. And if you do get into trouble, you can just let everything go and get to the surface. When I used to dive with a rig line a lot off Moreton Island, if I was doing, say, or even still, if I do some deeper spots off the Southern Barrier Reef or something like that, if I'm diving off Moreton or any of those deeper areas, if I get to the bottom with the rig line and shoot a fish, and I know it's not going to hole up, or if I've shot it well, or I've pulled it enough off the bottom, I just let everything go and swim to the surface very slowly, let the rig line go through my hand, because I know that the extra drag of trying to pull that fish up is huge, especially if you're doing quite a deep dive. And yes, with a reel, you can free spool it, but there is a lot more drag, believe it or not, holding a gun with the rubbers on the end, flailing around, all these extra pieces of drag. I'm sure as I've seen, congratulations on becoming a freediving instructor, the importance of drag when it comes to these more intense dives that are more physically demanding on your body. And all those little 1%ers and 2%ers add up to a big cumulative effort that may, be enough to mean that you have a loss of motor control or something along those lines. So yeah, I think it's just horses for courses. But if you don't know which horse for which course, go for the very basic one.
And there's pros and cons to doing a course when you're starting spearfishing. I think if hopefully you found an experienced buddy that takes you out. But let's talk about some of the various contexts that people encounter. So I think my personal opinion is and this is why we've preached it so adamantly on the podcast, I really feel like 80 or 90% of spearfishing contexts, you should use just that 50-foot, 15-meter rig line and float setup for probably 80 or 90% of the different spearfishing contexts that we encounter. However, like you've identified, you've got areas where there's heavy kelp. We've got caves and artificial structure, which with caves and artificial structure, you're probably not penetrating into it in your initial forays out, are you?
I dive a really large pier south of London called the Brighton Pier, and that must be at least 100 meters wide at its widest point. That I'm right in the middle there, sometimes with a torch. Looking around for stuff, and there's just I tow my float in, but I just keep my rig line. I just use it as somewhere to store my fish, but I just keep my rig line wrapped up and have it about a meter long, and then just hook it off to the structure there, and then dive around with my reel gun. But there's no way I'd dive in there with a float line. It just doesn't seem to work. But also to your point there, where you said 80 to 90% of your spearfishing can be done with a rig line, or the 50-foot 15-meter rig line.
I'm thinking just for guys starting out. They're not even entering past 30 foot.
I was just for starting out. Absolutely. Chances are you're probably not going to be getting too much deeper than 10 meters. But the more I travel around and see the way that different people spearfish in different parts of the world in different terrains, that may not cut it for some people as well. But it's a good, I would say it's a general good rule of thumb just to go for 50 foot and a 15-meter float line. It's manageable, and it's going to stop you getting into deeper water a bit inadvertently if you are quite naturally talented. I've had it a few times. Recently, I was just in Greece and I did find some clear water, and I have a new dive watch actually, and I was coming to the surface and I thought, that felt a lot more than 12.8 meters. That felt like quite a long dive, a big dive. But anyway, whatever. Yeah, I can see the bottom very clearly. And then I realized I was looking at the dive time, which is 1:28. And then I had the cycles on it wrong. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, okay, that was 25 meters. And that sort of stuff. If you've got a float line that's only 15 meters long, you're not going to be, sitting down at, 25 meters looking in holes and stuff for stupid fish. It's a great safety net, I would say.
Because, I mean, some people that use dive watches love having all these depth alarms set up and stuff like that. I've only used the dive watch a handful of times and I hate all those alarms. To me, it's incredibly disruptive. Like, one thing I love about the spearfishing experience is the quiet and solitude. If I do end up getting a dive watch, and don't get me wrong, some of them appeal to me because I love the idea of having that extra discipline and checkpoint to make sure I spend a bit longer on the surface.
Well, I also did a blog post that will be coming out as a video about dive watches. But I guess for me on the dive watch front, you've had a podcast on this before, but I dive alone a bit. Just the nature of the beast of where I am at the moment, and I use my dive watch to try and make my diving a little bit safer. And by sticking to stringent surface intervals when I am by myself particularly. And look, there is risk in everything, and I'm not encouraging people to dive alone, but I'm also not going to spout some BS that I don't do it, because I do it. And I would say it's 50-50. For me, I assess the risk on the day. Some spots I won't dive depending on the conditions as well. I don't go to, there's one particular spot I really love diving, but if I go there and the conditions aren't absolutely perfect, I'm not going to go out and, try and look for these cod or something like that in 25 meters. I'm not going to go do it by myself. I'll restrict myself a lot less. But I would say I like a dive watch. That's just me. But how are you doing a freediving instructor course without a dive watch if you can't?
We ended up having to do it with dive watches, and this is what I'm talking about. This is where I'm using it. There's some old school wisdom that, about Reelguns and stuff, and we've kind of stuck to the orthodoxy around it. And this is why, to Django's point, that's why we've kind of stuck to this narrative on the podcast, just like we've stuck to the narrative of always dive with a buddy. However, I confronted that conversation, and we did that I Dive Alone episode and had a robust conversation about how to do it. I think one of the things that comes through in all of these conversations, Dan, whether it's dive watches, Reelguns, or diving alone, is the need to learn how to do a risk assessment, which is kind of what you just what you've just alluded to. And I think putting some wheels on that is quite difficult, though, because sometimes when you're new, you don't even understand the risk that you need to analyze in order to make good decisions. But then a lot of the guys that do some of the riskier forms of diving are the guys that are sort of they're starting to get down deeper and spend some bottom time there, and then it's like you think you're better than you are, and you kind of become oblivious or sort of, I don't know. It's like you
complacent. You become a bit complacent about things for sure.
Yeah, and you just sort of become adapted to the level of risk, and you stop being cautious and pumping your own brakes, particularly if you've got the types of personalities that we have in spearfishing, which is, often we're sort of fairly competitive, predominantly male, and the females that do this can be very risk tolerant as well. And
they're also very competitive, particularly the Spanish and Portuguese women that I've met at competitions. They're just as serious as the men from what I've seen. Not to say that any other nations aren't that I've seen compete, but just I've noticed particularly the Spanish and the Portuguese. Well, they're competitive at all spearfishing competitions, but that their female team is nothing to be sniffed at all.
Yeah, righto. Okay, so
but yes, to your point, yes, men generally men that are competitive tend to have a bit more. That is a trait of some men. Yeah, for sure.
And then we add in Reelguns, depth, dive watches, all these other things. And then some people like to point to one or the other as being the causes of some of the accidents and near misses that we have in spearfishing.
And there has been a lot of that, which which I'm sure you're aware of. You're out on the internet. You see the things. You've got your feelers out there, and some people are vehemently against Reelguns, saying that I won't let somebody on my boat with them. And often these sort of people are the ones that you can't actually have a logical conversation with about anything other than seeing their own viewpoint. So you just you take it with a grain of salt.
Some
really.
people like overly simplistic heuristics too. Like they will say, all right, nothing longer than a minute and nothing over 10 meters or something like that. And it's like, well, like, okay, that's
if that's what you're comfortable with, that's totally fine. And I would say everybody's got their own limits as well. And if that's where you want to go and you're happy doing spearfishing, perfectly fine. Absolutely. If that's what brings you joy and brings you a feed and you're happy and comfortable doing that and that's your acceptable level of risk, full marks, go for it.
I think in some ways, unless you're going to do a risk assessment, having these ideas maybe helps you to be safe because you're not making really much decisions. You're just going, this is the sort of diving I do and these are my rules and that's it. And I think that's okay. But I think you can teach people the big picture concepts, which is risk analysis and going, okay, so walk us through like some Reelgun risks. Someone's getting in the water, right? And they're going to one of these areas where it's actually safer to dive with a Reelgun than it is with a rig line and a float. What are some of the key factors they need to be aware of with this?
Boats, 100%. Boats, not straying too far from your rig light, your float. Because if you are still taking a float in, for instance, I was in Greece in September, boats everywhere. It's just turbo boats because it's summer and the whole Euro summer has kind of been condensed into August, September, October because of COVID. So there's a lot of boats out in the water, and I particularly, I wanted to use a Reelgun because they were the guns that I had because I know the type of terrain that I was hunting was going to be possibly in holes and trying to hide myself from very, very cagey fish. And this headland that I wanted to dive around had boats whizzing around. So number one, I just waited till later in the day. It's probably better to fish later in the day anyway. I find I love late afternoon diving because I can sleep in. I can get a good night's sleep because I don't have that anxiety about getting up early. Love an afternoon dive. It also limits your dive as well because it cuts you off because the sun goes down. So it's you go, I've got 3 hours to go hard. Whereas if you go out for a morning dive, you go, oh, if things are good, you could end up staying out for 6 hours and be totally shattered by the end of it. Which anyway, I took a float line and a float and anchored it right next to me because I knew there'd be boats whizzing past because that's the risk of having the Reelgun is you're practically invisible. Now, your example, if somebody's jumping off the side of a boat, not shore diving, yes, there is the risk of other boats, but I would argue that having a good boatie and communication between your boat driver and understanding the drift that everybody's going to be doing. And I've done this for many years with Tim McDonald, Josh Ball, Bryson Sheehy. I would trust any of those guys to drive a boat and find me. I would trust them to keep an eye on me. Those guys were the greatest dive buddies I've ever had. And we all have this understanding of how each other works. And when we dive with a Reelgun and we're drifting near the boat's going to stay in between us. We might spread out, 30, 40 yards between us. But what we do is because we understand that there's no visibility without a float line, we just hold the gun halfway up and tuck it under your arm and have the handle and the reel sticking out of the water. So there you've got a 1/2 meter long mast. It's a little uncomfortable for breathing up because you have to physically hold it a little bit more, but there's just one way of mitigating that visibility risk is you can see where everybody is a lot easier. For boats, generally, if you want to dive a spot with a Reelgun, don't go on a weekend. They're all the sort of risks you have to think about. If you want complete safety, well, not complete safety, but if you want a higher level of safety, don't go and you're trying to mitigate boats, go when there's less boats, or only if you're going to Hutchinson at Moreton Island, Hutchinson's Reef, Hutchies, you want to shoot a wahoo, you go there on a Saturday when it's a glass off. There's going to be 1 billion boats out there. You would be just foolish to dive it without a float and a flag and a rig line. You just got to pick your battles, I guess, on certain things. And like you say, that risk assessment on the day, go, yes, it's safe to use a reel gun, or it's not to use a reel gun. Or, well, it's more safe to use a reel gun in this situation than another situation. I mean, all spearfishing's unsafe to a degree, but I would say, just horses for courses, really. Like, you just got to say, is this a stupid idea, or what I'm about to do? What could possibly go wrong? And I've been around long enough, and so have you, to realize you see it happens it seems every month somebody passes doing this sport, and then all the whispers come out about what's happened. And if you don't, I think it's very foolish not to try and learn something from those tragedies. And I won't go into specifics on certain ones, but generally a lot of them do involve reel guns. So therefore there is a high risk of just statistically, but that's not to say you can't do it safely. But I'm not sure where I'm going.
There's lots of things. Yeah. I was going to say, one of the other things that I have with the reel guns is, and this is even if you're diving fairly shallow, which is what a lot of newer divers are going to be doing. Let's say you're doing a drift dive, there's a mild current, and you're in, like, let's just say 25 to 35 feet, right? And, you're diving around cavey structure. If you shoot a fish and you've got poor shot placement, or you don't put tension on the shooting line immediately, you run the risk of that fish holing up on you. Because when you shoot a fish, their natural reaction, a lot of them, and this is particularly true with grouper species, like, any of it, they run back to the hole, and they're going to bury you in the hole. Yep. And if you've got even mild current, it's difficult to swim against, and you've got a reel gun, like, it's just painful. You've got to clip off to a float anyway to make sure that, if you can't swim against it, you've got to clip off to the float. And then your float runs the risk of even getting thin. And then someone's got to drop you off up current. You got to work that out. And then you've got to swim down, try and free that up again. And it becomes...
It's like you're describing my life shooting jobfish. I've had plenty of blow-ups on this. I've had one that hooked up on the bottom with a reel gun. I'm screaming at Tim to pick me up, and then he said, well, what am I going to do? The other guys are drifting down current, so I'm going to go get them. I'm like, don't leave me. There's a big bull shark. Don't leave me. He's like, well, they're going to get lost if I try and help you here. I'm like, well, this sucks. I ended up just yanking as hard as I could and snap the mono, but that's a bit easier to do with a float and float line. You can always just leave the float and float line and come back to it, put a GPS mark in it, it's going to be there, sort of thing. But saying that, if you're going to be shooting lots of fish around holes, don't use a double wrap. I see so many people using a double wrap, and that gives fish a huge head start. Anytime you ever see one of those videos where somebody gets holed up by a big fish, there's more often than not a massive loop of slack shooting line there, ready for that fish just to get a massive head start before you can even think about putting the brakes on. I went so far as to counter this with a 110 roller that I made 6 or 7 years ago to shoot jobfish with after that incident where I got holed up because, I had the double wrap on it. I ended up putting a pin halfway up my gun to do a wrap and a half. So I still got a little bit of extra shooting range to utilize the roller, but I didn't quite give it that extra 2 meters or meter and a half or whatever to get to the reef and bury me. And that seemed to serve me quite well. But having a double wrap on longer guns and shooting bottom fish, it's going to get you into trouble a lot.
Yeah, so it brings up the same sort of point that you said earlier. Like, only use a reel gun if you're prepared to use the reel gun. I mean, if you do some of these scenarios we're talking about, at the very least, you probably lose your shaft, and you might get to keep your gun.
Yeah, lose your shaft.
If you've got a really good crew, but if you got multiple divers in the water and you're diving off a boat, it's just a friggin' nightmare. Whereas the float.
With having four guys on a boat with rig lines and floats out the back, I agree.
That's a nightmare too.
Start a drift. I used to remember my formative years at Moreton Island having floats out the back, and you'd have to, this person's on that side and their float goes there, and when they dive over, and the amount of times I was just about to shoot that wahoo, but your line was caught up on my line because you swam over it. And I'm like, as if, mate, I was on the everybody's had those arguments, and
I nearly had a punch up with
I can see
Turbo.
the look on your face. You've had that. You've had that moment.
I nearly had a
haven't you?
punch up with Turbo. I was on the bottom and creeping up towards this structure, and I had these two cobia in front of me. They were dumbass, and they were sitting out in front, and I was just slowly creeping towards them, like getting in range, and then I feel my gun just stop, and then I'm like, I look back up, and the float line's just pulled out tight. And it's jammed with turbos, and he's angry as well, and he's yanking me in the other direction. And the gun slowly keep pulling me backwards away from these cobia. That was the first ever opportunity I had to shoot one. I was filthy.
Livid.
I got to the surface. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And it nearly come to blows. But that was the story of a lot of our diving.
It does. Yeah, it does happen. And even if you're not having someone tangle up, I've been on many times where you sit on the bottom and there's current and you're sitting there waiting for a snapper or something like that. And say you're sitting on the bottom in 20 meters and you've got, or 60 foot, and you've got a 100-foot float line, 30-meter float line. It doesn't take more than 10, 15 seconds for that line to get pretty taut up to your float, and then it begins pulling the bottom of your gun, makes it very hard to aim, and then you're getting pulled off the bottom. There's pros and cons. But yeah, I guess just like anything, you just got to know when to use what or whatever you're comfortable with. And unfortunately, like you say, unfortunately, when you're new to diving, you don't know. So someone has to tell you.
I'm going to point all these guys to your videos. So if you type in reels on spear guns, do you really need one for spearfishing on the Daniel Mann YouTube channel? Go and watch that. It's an informative video. As usual, Daniel making high quality videos to educate and inform the spearfishing community.
Just trying to give back. I don't know. Well, actually, not try. I would say yes, giving back, but at the same time, like you probably get a lot of emails and questions asking you, hey, should I get a reel on my gun? And a lot of my videos, once I've typed it out 2 or 3 times, I think I should just make a video on this and go, here's a link. Here's a lot more than I can type out. So it's somewhat selfish reason in one degree, but also because I know somebody out there is probably not going to lose their gun or get into a sticky situation because I make that video. Well, that's what I hope anyway. That people just can make more informed decisions. And I didn't swing either way on the debate. I've used Reelguns and rigged lines.
I do exactly the same as you. I normally take a screenshot of the comments or questions, and then I try and group them into sort of like folders. And then as soon as I've got like enough there, I really try and create these topical episodes. But I've got heaps sitting there in a folder and I haven't done anything with it. Got a sweet deal for you today, guys. Go to freedivingfamily.com and learn from Adam Stern and a select team of experts on different disciplines. There's Frenzel, Advanced Frenzel, Hands-Free Equalization, Mouthful, Deep Frenzel Equalization, Bite Fitting Essentials. These are courses that will give you the 1% that will allow you to improve. Use the code SPEARO to get 20% off any course at freedivingfamily.com. Again, that's the code SPEARO to get 20% off at freedivingfamily.com. Thanks, Adam and team. Love it. Noobers, good news. Did you know that every pair of penetrator fins receives a protective layer of Kevlar 49 multi-axial reinforcement? You even know what that means? It means that it prevents chips and cracking. It means you're going to get longevity out of your fins. And that's exactly what you need when you're spending some dollars on some good fins. Visit penetratorfins.com. Get yourself a pair of reinforced super tough fins with beyond industry warranty at penetratorfins.com. Use the code NoobSpearo to save $25 on any pair of penetrator blades. That's right, use the code NoobSpearo to save $25 on any pair of blades at penetratorfins.com. But Reelguns was an interesting one, and I thought it was good timing, so I thought that's why I'd chat with you briefly today about it. So again,
do you use a Reelgun or if you're going out tomorrow? What are you going to use?
I'm at a different end of the spearfishing journey than a lot of people. I still even if you're diving off Brisbane, I think it's float line city. I think that's what you should start with. I think there's more than enough complication in spearfishing without adding the hassles of a reel. Like the problems with reels too, and I've seen it recently with guys trying them for the first time, is that some of them think it's a fishing line, and even smart people, and they're trying to use it like you're using a fishing line from the surface. And I'm like, no. You shoot the fish.
That's fine when it's a mullet, but you try and do that on a Spanish mackerel, and gun's going to get ripped out of your hands really quickly.
Yeah, and I watch guys learn the same lessons every time. So you shoot the fish and it pulls line off the reel, which is great. You set your tension, your drag, head up to the surface, and then you want to swim up current away from your gun and then pull the fish up manually. You're not using the reel for any of it. And then after you've got your fish up, taking it off, strung it up, however you're doing it, then and only then do you start to reel the line back onto it.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
But
if you've got really great dive buddies like I've had in the past, say you shoot something and it's the end of the drift or whatever like that, and you've been fighting something, you've got the fish in your hands, you're dealing with it. My dive buddies, Bryson, Tim, Josh, all those guys will do it. They'll grab your gun and start reeling it in because they know it's in their interest to get that gun sorted and back in the boat to do another drift. So if you're a dive buddy and you see someone's reel, flying out, go wind it in for them because, it's beneficial for you and it just gets you more time in the water. So I know what you mean. It's with it, all the line trailing out. I've actually, and swimming up current, I thought that was a very obvious thing to swim up current, not have the line pile around you. But I had a friend here message me afterwards, and he's been diving 10 years. Hasn't really done too much diving outside of the UK. So, max sort of fish, 7-8 kilos. And he's like, oh, I never thought about swimming up and all the line tangled around. I said, yeah, if you do that, if we're abroad and you shoot something big, it's going to be a bad situation for you. He's like, oh yeah, it's a really good point. But for people that I guess aren't used to shooting, 10 kilo plus fish, you don't even need to think about it because I can pull just about anything here backwards in the water, apart from one of the bluefin.
A lot of the spearfishing stuff is monkey see, monkey do, or you watch a YouTube video, or you hear it on a podcast, and then you think about it, and then you try and find someone else that's doing it, but you get part of that conversation, it enters your brain, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm going to try that. And I feel like so much of spearfishing is like that. That's why we wrote 99 tips. That's why the podcast is I guess the information's so actionable. Like it's
very actionable, super actionable.
You don't know until you don't know what you don't know. And,
yes, true.
See what I did there? I almost was a play off the real truth behind Reelguns.
But you are a dad, so you've got an excuse.
All right, moving to London, Dan. How do you start diving on the other side of the world? So 6 years ago, you moved from the bustling metropolis of Brisbane here on the east coast of Australia. You moved to London, the spearfishing destination at the heart of every Spearo.
Well, yes. I didn't even think I didn't think there'd be such a big scene here, actually. I started by what most people do when they want to go dive somewhere is a lot of videos. And then I started seeing all these great videos of people shooting sea bass and gilt-head sea bream and flatties and all this sort of stuff. And then I realized it was in the Channel Islands in Jersey because I wasn't so up on my geography, which is, Jersey or Guernsey, very close to France, quite different. Well, it's similar to the UK, but, a lot more similar to UK, mainland UK, but a lot cleaner water and more fish. But in the UK, there is. I just watched videos, and eventually I got my dad to send me a wetsuit over, my 5mm wetsuit, and then I booked a weekend trip down to a youth hostel in Brighton because it was the only place I could get to on a train that I thought might be all right for a dive, and dived under this giant pier in my 5mm wetsuit in 15 degrees or something like that, and that was a very big shock to the system. I shot 2 mullets. I still remember my first 800-gram mullet that I shot, and I shot a place as well, and the viz was maybe 2 or 3 meters. And as weird as it sounds, I was more stoked on shooting that 800 or 900-gram mullet than I was the last Spanish mackerel I shot in Australia, which was, 10, 15 kilo mackerel. I've shot a few mackerel, and just the elation of going to do something by myself on the other side of the world with no help. That can be a bit of a wanky thing. Oh, I did it by myself, but I did, and sometimes that's more rewarding. When you do these things by yourself, and I did. So I was super stoked, and then I joined the London International Club, which is a club of people from all walks of life. There's South Africans, there's Italians, there's Russians, there's Ukrainians, there's Brazilians. We've got every nationality under the sun are represented at our club. And just a great bunch of people, and I decided to do a pairs competition that they were advertising, and they did the mix and match service, and they signed me up with the only other antipode in the group, my good friend Andrew Gom, and we dived this pairs competition together, did all right. And been friends ever since, done a few trips to Norway, go diving around here. And, when he comes to London for work, we always go out for drinks and stuff like that. So yeah, I just basically joined a club and threw myself in the deep end. And then you just, you're onto the Facebook groups and all that sort of stuff, and you do the reading, and then you hear whispers of this. And then, yeah, it's quite exciting learning, all the dive locations and all the secret, not necessarily secret spots, but, when you get those questions, somebody moves to Brisbane, where do I go diving? I just go, you and I just roll your eyes. You try not to hurt your neck with how hard you're rolling your eyes. And then, but, it's obvious to you and I, but you forget. It was a great wake up call for me about how insular you can get diving in your own backyard. And that's all you kind of, it's fine to know that, but you don't learn too much about other styles of diving. And then I think
there's different subcultures too,
it's fascinating that the different cultures of spearfishing around the world. And I haven't been to the States spearfishing, but I would love to get over there. It looks immense. And so here I just threw myself at whatever I could dive wise, got, getting trains down to Brighton often. And I remember when I was doing Sparky work, I took a day off work because it'd been blowing offshore for about 2 weeks with very little wind, and there was a neap tide, and I thought it's going to be clear down there. It was November, so it was 12 degrees or something in my 5mm wetsuit, was not ideal. And I remember I shot a couple nice place, and I shot the benchmark here fish is a 10-pound bass. So I shot a 10.5-pound bass, and absolutely freezing when I got out. And I remember, dragging a bag, a mile back uphill to the train station with, blood leaking out the bottom and ice and that sort of stuff. And I left all my clothes on the beach and this sort of thing, and, got back home and I thought, I've shot a 10-pound bass. That wasn't too hard, like 7th or 8th dive in the UK, and I've never shot one since. Or a 10-pounder anyway. I've come close, but I just decided to, this is where I am, and I'm going to enjoy the new challenge and the new species, and just throw myself at it. And
I watched your recent vid, smashing mullet at the front of that Brighton.
Yeah, Brighton Pier. Yeah, I went down there.
I really enjoyed it. I was like, I don't think you need tropical, clean, warm water to have a great time spearfishing and understand what the lifestyle of it's all about. I think, we're just about wherever you can go, you can spear. And I mean, there's still the joy of catching, preparing your own food, and then serving it up, trying different things, experimenting.
Absolutely. And there's that sort of culture that gets put out there in spearfishing is, if it's not a dogtooth tuna, or if it's not super clean, warm water with tropical fish, where you basically just throw a spear gun over the side of the boat and it'll hit something edible, that, if it's not that, it's not good. I have heaps of people telling me, why'd you leave Brisbane? Come back to Australia, mate. I was like, well, I like it here. I don't have any sharks to deal with, which is really great. And this is after diving a few different places, and I've dived in Norway, Denmark, Finland, so like most of the Nordic countries you can't spear in Sweden. I've dived in. You also can't spear in Iceland, but I've dived there as well. I've dived a handful of Mediterranean countries, most of a fair bit of the UK, and
it's accessible, isn't it? It's super accessible. All of those countries are super accessible.
Yeah, they are. They're really accessible. A lot of it was for work, actually. I was going to Denmark a lot for taking photos and videos at a data center for a large tech giant that can't be named for NDA reasons, but a large tech giant. They have data centers. They're everywhere. They build them in cool places because it's cheap on air conditioning to keep all their servers cool. So I was going to Denmark a lot. But actually the first time I went to Denmark in 2017, I saw a competition advertised on Facebook, and I thought, that looks good. Go to Copenhagen. I'm like, I like Copenhagen. It's a beautiful city, great food, fairly on the expensive side if you want to have a good time out there. And so I went to this competition, and my mate from Finland that I'd met a couple of years prior in Australia, that my mate Bryson met in Peru, sort of thing. There's a very loose connection that happens with spearfishing circles. Yeah. Somebody knows somebody that knows somebody. You're like, hey, let's go diving. That happened. So we got in. I went over and did this Öresund Skorpena Cup, and our team ended up winning the team's event, and I shot all my fish in the last 20 minutes and then ended up winning the competition, which was just insane.
That's crazy.
And yeah, I just thought, this is great. Like, I'm in 6 meters of water, seeing cod from the surface, 7 kilos, and I'm just snotting them. I thought, even though the water's 6 degrees and my face feels like it's on fire, this is awesome. I just love that it's something different. And yeah, that's kind of where I just thought, anywhere that you can dive, you should dive. And I would encourage anybody that sort of gets discouraged, and you see it often with people from Sydney. They go, I live in Sydney, there's nothing to shoot and that sort of thing. But I think it's that constant case of comparison is the thief of all joy. As soon as you see somebody else doing something, it ruins your day. And I think we've talked about this before, maybe in private or on the podcast before, but where people, you see the Facebook photos that come out over the weekend, you're super stoked on your personal best 10 kilo Spanish mackerel, and then somebody goes out and shoots a 35 kilo wahoo off Brisbane as well, and then suddenly you think that you haven't shot anything good, and the only reason
I still haven't shot a wahoo. I live in Brisbane.
Have you not landed a wahoo or just not shot one?
I haven't even shot one. I haven't even shot at one. Last dive, actually, I saw maybe 4 or 5 wahoo. Definitely 4, maybe 5. But just didn't get close to them. Not a chance.
I think I probably did 15 wahoo before I landed one.
I think you got to, it's like you start to see a fish, and then you can identify, you start to understand its body language and stuff, and then you start to figure out, okay, what's my response? What do I need to do to get within range of shooting that thing? And for me, like, I was watching them, I was saying, I need a throw flasher here. Just something to get them to turn around, because they just cruised off, and there was I can't do anything.
So sometimes they want to come in, sometimes they don't. They're kind of a bit of a funny fish sometimes. Sometimes they can be very easy to shoot, and other times not. I used to have a lot of trouble keeping them on the spear once I'd shot them, and I tried. I started going after them with prangers at one stage on a 1.3 to try and shoot them in the head, but never was quite successful at getting a spear into one. And in the end, I think it was Bryson that said to me, just shoot it in the head. And so I thought, stuff it. Next one I see, I'm just, because I was shooting the mid body like a mackerel, and then you hear all those stories, that you shoot it down the back and it slows them down and it's easy to land them, blah, blah, blah. I could never keep one on the spear. So I just sconned one right in the face and got it. And it was great. And then I shot another one the next drift, and I thought, brilliant. What if I just shoot him in the face?
Get the monkey off your back. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think, a lot of it's mental sort of thing with those wahoo. Also in Tonga, I was there in 2015. I've got a highlights reel of me missing wahoo, about 10 of them, because I was just so excited to get a wahoo, because they were potentially 40, 50 kilo fish.
Holy moly.
But they were slobs, but I just stuffed every single one of them up and never ended up landing one or anything in Tonga. But I know what you mean. Sometimes you can get a little bit too excited and you
For me, like some of the travel spearfishing I've done, and you've done way more than I have, it's great to get out of your own lunchbox and do something different. I think even though you might be quite experienced at spearfishing, it's really humbling going to another environment.
If you have a taste for humble pie, go to the Mediterranean, and it is there in spades. Most difficult place I've ever tried to fish in my life. It's unbelievable.
Skunk City.
It's what, sorry?
Skunk City. You get skunked all the time, like it's nothing. I think maybe I picked that up from an American guest or something, but yeah, I like the saying. Well, you get nothing, you get skunked, like. Yeah,
sure. You get no dice. It's an amazing place to dive, and I always learn something every time I go there, and that's what I love about going to all these different places. And I'd encourage anybody to, if they have the opportunity or the means to, go dive somewhere else, even if it's within your own country or, up and down your state, or just go somewhere else, because you learn so many things, and a lot of those skills and things you learn are translatable, and they move to different areas. Like for a big one for me was learning how to not freeze in cold water. And it's easy to say just get a thicker wetsuit, but there's a lot of other things you can do to keep warm.
I remember that video you did, like you
I've done a video and everything.
You did a couple of videos on it, like wearing the shorts over top. That was memorable for me because I was traveling down to South Australia for some freediving courses, and I was worried about freezing in a 5 mil. I actually ended up being toasty warm, but that helps when you've got a couple of extra layers, I guess. I have a lot of internal insulation. You know what I'm saying?
Fair. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, but I tell you what, the piss doesn't go anywhere when you when you're in a big thick suit in the cold. It's like, and that's when you start thinking, oh, I need a pissette. I got to get one. Like
pissettes are just they're god tier. They are unbelievable. They are so good. I would never order a suit or wear a suit without one if I could help it. Just you don't stink. Your wetsuits don't stink. I don't know if you know some wetsuits, they just got that funk about them when they're a couple years old. They don't get the funk. I've had, a suit here, a 7 mil jacket that I've had for 5 years, and it doesn't have the funk because I've used a pissette with it most of the time. I'm into it. I haven't got a wetsuit with one fitted yet, but I like the idea of like a Velcro thing where you just pull out and it's weird. Not really an option when the water's 6 degrees though.
The awkward, weird hanging things. They're weird. They're just.
But for anyone that's listening and doesn't know what a pissette is, imagine a neoprene condom that's crossed with a scupper at the back of a self-draining deck boat. So the end is sewn in such a way that it lays flat and stops the water coming back in. But you can, you stick the old fella in there and let rip as needed. But I love them, but not for everybody. I understand that.
No, I think, I don't know. In the warm water, it's like most of the time if you're just wearing high-waisted pants, you can just pull down and away you go. But
I don't have time for that though. I'm
exactly.
I'm hunting. Warm water. It was 28 degrees in Greece the other day. The water on the surface, and so I'd sewn a 3 mil. I'd sewn a pissette on my 3 mil pants a couple of years ago, and I was just using a very old 3 mil suit there, and I was still very warm. But just having that pissette and not. I just think it's even worse when it's hot because it's sort of it steams around. You're sweating a bit, and you just smell all sorts of nasty.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah, I hate it these days. And you can't be bothered undoing your what do you call it? Your clips underneath on your suit. What do you call it?
Well, you got to undo your clip, and then you got to slide your weight belt up around your ribs so you can fold the thing up, and then you got to pull it back down, and then you get colder water, which is a bit of a shock, and then you're sort of floating around the surface like a bit of a. You're splashing around. You're splashing around. You could be drifting off. You could be missing fish. So I just think,
not watching your buddy. Yeah, all that shit. Yeah.
All that stuff. So I would say the pissette. I don't know if there's really a good option for the ladies.
Not yet. But there's some things in development. I know a few people doing some stuff. So
I think the Salt Sisters, Renee
from Salt Sisters,
her podcast. She was talking about some sort of wetsuit thing for female
I know someone
urination.
else working on it too. So the ladies have got good things in store. I think with the increase in interest from the female segment, I think the demand will drive innovation. Necessity is the mother of all invention. I think when enough people have the same problem, then people find solutions.
And there are a lot more women getting into the sport in this year's nationals for the UK. They've had some female entrants for the first time in a very long time, I believe, and even at World Championships for the last 2 World Championships, they've had female categories, which is great to see, as well as the Euro African Championships as well. So they're doing well. It's great to see.
Where were we? In terms of the
diving in different places and learning things. Oh, pissettes. Back to pissettes. Back to the penis chat.
Have you created a video about how to sew it in, or how did you learn? What did you do?
I put my wetsuit pants on, and you kind of just walk around in them for a little bit so you know where they settle, because when you put wetsuit pants on straight away, they normally sag a little bit. Yeah, they move a bit, and then you just kind of go to the top of your pelvic bone and then get a marker and just feel around for where the base of the shaft is, really.
And then I understand you just pretty much cut a leg off another pair of wetsuit pants and sewed that straight on as your set.
Not in the slightest. I just got the thumb off a small set of Cressy gloves and used that. That was probably, even then I still don't touch the sides. No, I think I don't know too much about sizing, but look.
Did you buy an aftermarket, like, because you can buy kits?
I got my Polo Sub sent me one because they put them on my suits, and then I just asked Giuliano if he could just send me a P-tube to put on my retrofit. And it was very easy. You just sort of sit it on, stitch it and glue it, and then on the inside you put a small, like 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter piece of smooth skin neoprene. You can sort of shimmy it round to create a nice sort of I'll have to take some photos, but basically it just sort of I'm not saying like a nice entry. I mean, just it's a nice seam that covers it, because it's quite an awkward angle for the neoprene to be joining at a right angle. If you know anything about manufacturing wetsuits, you want to avoid sharp angles for gluing and that sort of stuff. So it's just a bit of reinforcement. But yeah, I would highly recommend the P-tube. For a multitude of reasons.
I want some, but I just want to send my wetsuits away and get someone else to do it. Because
I'm sure there's somebody that's listening to this that would love to fit a P-tube and find the correct position for you as well.
Oh, good stuff. When you're starting to spearfish, there are a number of obstacles, and some of them are financial. Doing a freediving course is something that I've always recommended on this podcast. If you can do a freediving course with a Spearo, even better. But some of us can't even afford that. I've got good news for you. Today, you can do a freediving safety course for free at noobspearo.com/Ted. This course is brought to you by Ted Hardy from Immersion Freediving. He's got a passion for helping Spearos to dive safer, smarter, and have more fun as well. This freediving safety course is practical and it's free. Check it out at freedivingsafety.com or go to noobspearo.com/Ted and you'll find it there as well. Again, it's a free course just teaching you the basics of freedive spearfishing safety. Check it out, noobspearo.com/Ted. I just love a functional and simple spear gun that I can trust when I pull the trigger. Killshot spear guns utilize the finest of kiln-dried Burmese teak. Killshot spear guns also combine American-made parts and fine craftsmanship to bring you accurate, reliable, and simple spear guns that you can trust, fish after fish. Get $30 off any Killshot spear gun at killshotspearguns.com. Yes and amen, Noober. That's $30 off American-made performance spear guns at killshotspearguns.com. I'm really sorry for this terrible accent. Brought to you by Ed Martin at killshotspearguns.com. Love great awkward conversation. Thanks, Dan. I'm serious about getting them sewn into my wetsuits too. I need to probably settle in on a consistent brand of wetsuits too, but I'm a bit of a whore, like with wetsuits. I just, whatever. Like, I'm not even fussy. I think wetsuits in general these days, like, are pretty amazing. The amount of variety we've got on the market, the quality, the level of warmth they afford, combined with great flexibility. Like, they're nothing like wetsuits from 20 years ago. And I think, there's just some awesome shit on the market. I like the look of the Polo Sub. I like the custom look. I disagreed with your smooth skin video, because I'll wreck them within 2 days, I think. I'm nowhere near as careful as you.
It's just necessity for me for a smooth skin, particularly here, because I wear a 7mm jacket for a fair bit of the year, most of the year, except for summer. And having that extra layer of lining on the outside just makes the suit that much stiffer. So I would rather be a little bit more careful. But even the Forza Tray, the sandwich material ones, I've never ripped through the smooth skin part. I've obviously put nicks in it and cuts in it like you, but I've never gone straight through one side. Definitely on smooth skin. Yeah, I have ripped them. I was actually with Giuliano, the guy that makes my wetsuits. I was in Tuscany with him when we were diving in winter, like January 2020, actually pre-pandemic, and last day, and I put my suit on, and they used all the lube up in the shower, because we put our suits on in the shower because it's freezing outside. There's frost on the boat, sort of thing. Italy gets 100%. Cold, FYI, for people that Don't know. Well, they have the Alps, obviously, but anyway, some people don't think it doesn't get cold there. And yeah, I just put a massive rip through the side. I'm like, this guy's the guy that makes my wetsuits. He's my wetsuit sponsor. And I've just done the most rookie thing and ripped a smooth skin suit next to him. And he's just, hands in head, just like, what have you done? But lucky I had a spare 9.5mm jacket with me just in case.
Oh, wow.
So I wore that. The old 3/8 inch for those on the Imperial system that are clearly wrong.
I butcher that stuff
hate
all
the
the
Imperial
time.
system. I don't know why people in America still use the Imperial system.
I've talked to a few Americans. I've come to some sort of agreement like organization should be spelled with a Z. We'll do that. We'll make that change if you guys come to metric. And then we'll all be winning. You know what I mean? Like we'll have the correct phonemes according to spelling, and you guys will have the better way to measure stuff.
See, the only thing is there's only one right English, and that's British English, because it is English.
Now the Americans made some improvements on it. Like they've
made some absolute disasters.
They have.
This is my point. Laser is an acronym, so you can't change the S for a Z because it's light amplification through the stimulation of emitted radiation. So when Americans spell it with a Z, it's just completely wrong. It's an acronym. You can't just change it to a Z. So that's my biggest gripe with
from
grammar.
the point of view of an English teacher, right? I'm teaching Chinese kids how to they go, but spelling says S, and I'm like, yeah, look, this is what we do. We just sometimes it makes a Z sound, sometimes it makes a sound. And these poor buggers trying to learn English, it's a disaster of a language at times.
It is a terrible language, and there's just so many different words for the exact same thing, which is just infuriating.
But anyway, talking about language and the beauty of language and also the beauty of pictures, we're going to talk about cooking. 99 Spearo Recipes.
How did you segue from
That's
language to
this
pictures to
is
cooking?
me. Look,
if you want a better segue, yes, traveling around to different nations and experiencing their spearfishing culture and their culinary skills has been eye-opening, and I would encourage anybody that travels to taste and sample local food, because it opens your eyes to what other people do, and what you think is crappy in your country might be great in somebody else's country. For instance, you're probably going to vomit now, but I've had mullet carpaccio, and it was delicious. I had mullet carpaccio. We shot it in Tuscany, and Giuliano cooked a mullet risotto and some carpaccio. Well, he didn't cook the carpaccio, obviously, at his little gaff in Rome, in South Rome, and it was just a nice little time.
Is it carpaccio or is it carpaccio?
I think it's carpaccio.
Carpaccio.
Depends.
I like to butcher it anyway. It doesn't really matter. I was just,
Depends how much pontificating you want to be doing.
99 Spearo Recipes. You've submitted 4 recipes. I've got a salt-baked sea bass, a chorizo stuffed squid, crispy skin fish with salsa verde, and a spider crab linguine. 4 fantastic submissions. Some beautiful photography, Daniel. You love your cooking as much as you love your spearing, I reckon.
Well, there's no point in going spearing if you're not going to eat it.
But I think you need an experimental mindset. Like whether you're getting better at spearfishing or you're getting better at cooking. Like you need to sort of be prepared to fail. And
I've had some fails, big time on the cooking front for fish as well. Absolutely, yeah.
Have you made a video and left it in there? Because I would love to watch that. I would be pissed myself.
I had a Chinese style sweet and sour dogfish recipe. I realized how that may come across that I was doing a Chinese style one for a dogfish recipe, but I mean no racial insensitivity to that. And
just as an aside, I learned that the Chinese dog eating thing, in particular cities in the far north where it gets absolutely freezing cold, there was this sort of like urban legend that dog was good to eat to boost your immune system prior to winter. And that just sort of lasted for a while in some of these smaller cities. But if you talk to Chinese people from most of the urban centers, they will adamantly be against that. So, but
Fair
anyway,
enough.
I digress.
We digress. Sorry. Yes, I made a Chinese style sweet and sour dogfish recipe, and it just looked horrendous. It tasted all right, and I just couldn't bring myself to make a video about shooting a dogfish. And they are good to eat, but they're a little, they're quite easy to shoot. But then again, I've argued many a times that how hard something is to shoot isn't a measure of if you should shoot it or not, because you can get a really dumb Spanish mackerel. You can get a dumb kingfish. I mean, a kingfish is even easier to shoot than a rock because it swims up to you. But so I digress. So I have made some recipes that kind of sucked. It looked terrible. It looked like a dog spread. It literally looked like dog food on some noodles. And I thought, I'm not doing this. And I haven't really done it since. I've tried some other things, but yeah, well, like even that, salt baked sea bass. I've done that probably like 7, 8, 9 times over the last couple of years, and each time I just get a little bit more refined on how to do it and learn something different. The squid recipe I did off the fly because I shot a squid that was just under 1 kilo, and I thought I'd rather do something than salt and pepper squid, because everybody does salt and pepper squid. You go to any pub here and it's salt and pepper squid, and I don't know, you get a bit over that, that deep fried sort of usual boring stuff. And that's what I like about fish. And to paraphrase Josh Nyland, fish is the most diverse protein group out of everything. It has so many different flavors and tastes and textures and looks to it out of any other, sort of animal group, really, and which is really cool. And as spearfishers, you have access to so many different species, and that's why I really got behind this book. And I thought this is awesome, because I know that I've learned some of my favorite weekly dishes that I cook from going to, hanging out with Giuliano and, seeing what he does with, a halibut. And, I've had one time in Norway, he's cooked up this pasta that he's just made up on the fly, and he's got, scallops in it, and he's got halibut roe eggs running through the middle of it, because one of the halibut we got had some eggs in it, so we thought, I'm not going to waste those, no way. And he cooked the liver up as well, like there's a liver that the size of my face, and we checked no worms and that sort of stuff. And I just think that's such a really cool thing that you're never going to get exposure to if you're just sitting in Brisbane and you're just trying to shoot a mangrove jack, a parrotfish, a tuskfish, a Spanish mackerel, a kingfish in winter, and maybe the odd coronation trout, and all you're going to do is just deep fry that or crumb it and stick it on a burger and say that everything else tastes like bum. It's just a crying shame. I'm ashamed at the fish that I've turned my nose up, or the fish that I've wasted not utilizing a lot of the fish, or just cooking things terribly. And not everyone's a chef. I get that, but
I feel like Josh Nyland's book was like real eye-opening, because I think most of society feels like fish is really intimidating to cook and prepare.
It's because it's expensive.
Most people,
it's so expensive. The last time I was in Australia, I saw red emperor fillets actually it was in 2017 when I went back. I saw red emperor fillets there's a posh market in James Street in Fortitude Valley, and I saw red emperor fillets for $65 a kilo. I thought, I'd rather eat a steak. Who is going to risk stuffing up $65 a kilo for fish and chips? Like, you're not going to do it, and that's why people are terrified of it, I believe. And the quality of it may not be there. But you and I, you can make all the mistakes in the world because it's the cheapest free seafood, the cheapest free seafood we're ever going to get. The most expensive free seafood. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that saying too. And I guess because we have an available source of like fish all the time, we do have room and time to experiment. And I think, experimenting means that there's going to be some failure. I think one thing for me with the whole fish cookbook was that Josh introduced me to a whole new set of ideas. Like, he changed a lot of the way we look at fish. Like he says, if you take a cow and you cut that cow up into, the 50 or 60 common cuts that come off it, we don't treat all of those cuts the same.
No,
and yet
absolutely.
With fish, a lot of the time, we just treat every fish as if it's the same, but sometimes even on a single fish, like you'll have belly meat, you'll have shoulders, and all of these cuts require different treatment. and you can use them more effectively if you utilize different techniques. And then the rest of the book went on, and some of his recipes were just extremely intimidating.
Oh, very intimidating. I went balls to the wall and did the sea trout Wellington at Easter this year, and it was incredible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really good.
Okay.
It wasn't that hard. The hardest thing was comprehending how much ghee I just stuck into a pan to cook the mushrooms down for the outer, instead of having like the traditional sort of pate that you would put on the outside of a beef Wellington, or sometimes people will use mushrooms, but a lot of the time you get like a pork pate around it. They do this lentil and mushroom type thing, but the ghee that was going into that was just heavy. Tasted amazing though. But yeah, like it's great to see what is possible. And I would say it's a great book to have on the shelf, but you're not going to cook everything in it. It's just, it's really nice to be inspired by.
I think with 99 Spear Recipes, what I went for was like, I always felt like the whole fish cookbook was like a ladder, and the bottom 2 or 3 rungs were missing, just to help us get out of our comfort zone and just get moving in the right direction. And I feel like, so recipes, submissions like yours, just help people to just think outside the box and to try something different. Talk about the salt-baked sea bass. I have seen this dish. I have yet to attempt it. What kind of fish is this suitable for, and how would someone approach it for the first time?
I would say measure your oven first, because if you can't fit it in the oven, it's very difficult to do. So I would make sure you get an appropriate sized fish for the oven and a tray that you have. For that particular recipe, you'll be very proud of me. I went out and bought a fresh tray to do that recipe for the photos, and it still doesn't look that good, just because most oven trays look pretty bad. So normally what you do is you'd put some baking paper down there or alfoil down there, just so you don't put rust spots on your tray, because there's a lot of salt on there and there's a lot of fish juice that might come out at the end. But I think the type of fish you want is something small to medium size, sort of around 2 kilos max. And yeah, I mean, if you've got a large oven, sure, go for it. But it's just a simple way of keeping all the moisture in a fish, because that is one of the complaints with a lot of fish, is it's easy to dry out, because you can overcook fish very, very easily and it will dry out and it's not very pleasant. Whereas the idea behind the salt bake is creating an entire sarcophagus almost of salt around this fish, and the salt is wet out with water and an egg white just to keep it a little bit more bonded. You technically don't need the egg white. I've done it without the egg white, but it's a bit easier with the egg white. Sense, yeah. And you just basically make a layer on the bottom of the tray, put your fish on, and then cover the thing on the top. If you want to add herbs and stuff like that inside the gut cavity, you can, to permeate through the fish, but it's just a nice way to get the marrow cooking out through the fish, all those good parts that come out of the bone. All meat tastes better off the bone, I think. Ribs, awesome. They're on the bone. All sorts of fish taste really good on the bone, because you just get a lot more of that gelatinous cartilage stuff that comes out through the frame. And it sort of just all keeps it all in there. And to top it off, it looks super impressive. And if you want to go super next tier when you serve it for somebody, just throw some overproof spirit or brandy on the top and set it on fire, and it will, you can come out flaming and it's not going to affect the fish at all. It's just for show. And then you just crack it open and peel away the salt, and it doesn't taste salty at all. But the main thing that you have to do is leave the scales on, because they form an impermeable moisture barrier, so the salt doesn't go through. Otherwise it'll go through with osmosis if you scale it, and then you'll have a very salty fish. So recommend leaving the scales on.
All right, cool. Yeah, I like it. So that recipe is one of the submissions that we got in 99 Spearo Recipes. I'm pretty excited, and I really appreciate all your help with the book, Dan, in terms of helping us go through and analyze some of the recipes. I think you might be recreating a couple too yet, if you're up for it. Yes,
I will have to recreate some of them, just for photography, just to get the styling as high quality as we can. What the other thing that I really like about it is when people come into spearfishing and they start spearfishing, if they're not from any other hunting background or a fishing background for that matter, if they're just going purely into spearfishing, like you say, you don't know what you don't know. And with the reels, you may not know what to do with it. And for a lot of people, they don't even know how to kill a fish properly, let alone that you should put it on ice or any of these things. And I understand there's a great section at the start of the book looking after your catch and that sort of thing. And that grassroots information, I think, will be invaluable to people that are just starting out. It's a great compliment to going side by side with 99 tips to get better at spearfishing, because the better you get at spearfishing, you're going to get more fish, and you're going to have to learn how to cook them and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, nah. Cheers, bro. I'm super excited about it as well. I've had some really talented people come on board. People like yourself, Harry Foster, like some of the Spearo chefs have been absolutely unbelievable. Talking about that, James Sacker jumped on a podcast for me last week, and he said,
James Sacker, there's a blast from the past.
Yeah, 100%. I grew up with you and him in Spearfishing Down Under magazine and IFSN. He was a regular contributor.
And when he had that cover, he had like a 35 kilo mulloway or something ridiculous on the cover of SDM. And he used to write really cool shore diving articles for IFSN back in the day with, what's that geezer's name? Simon Latta, was it? Is that Dodgy? Is that Dodgy? No, Dodgy's that Scott somebody, I think his name was Dodgy, and he used to shoot a heap of big spotty mackerel as well. Yeah, really, really going back there for them. Yeah. And they used to have those really bright blue Oma wetsuits, the camo ones.
And he always wears wetsuit shorts.
Yes, I don't know how those guys wear wetsuit shorts on mid-north coast New South Wales, but I guess if you're in and out like a rat out of an aqueduct, you can just do it.
He did say hello to Nana Arms for me, was what he said.
Oh, well, hello, James. Actually, I think the only one time I did see James, I think I was having some trouble on the boat ramp at Tweed Heads. I think my mate, I'd driven the boat on, but my mate didn't put the handbrake on very hard at all on my Hilux, and the whole thing started sinking down into the boat ramp at Tweed, and I was just panicking. And I believe there was a few posts on some forums about my misfortune or on Facebook. The word got around very quickly.
Did James take photos of you and chuck them up?
Sorry?
Did James stop you in?
I think somebody just said, "Oh, hey, did you have any trouble on the boat ramp? How'd you go diving today?" I'm like, "Yeah, fine." And I think some people were pissing themselves laughing. I think it might have been James Sacker or Wayne Anderson or somebody. I don't know who it was that was laughing at my misfortune. But rightly so. It was pretty silly. I think I got the lights out award at the Tweed Club that year for that particular stunt. Look, we've all been there. We've all been there, nearly sinking boats and sinking cars, etc.
Let's talk about YouTube. So we talked a bit about people being critical of living in the UK over Australia. I think you take Spearing with you wherever you go. What videos have kind of resonated best with the community, do you think? And which ones have surprised you, in terms of how much people have engaged? Ooh. I look on YouTube too, and I like, you get really, really high engagement, and I feel like sometimes it's almost like YouTube are maybe curating their algorithm a bit to get away from hunting and fishing these days. Would that be fair?
I don't know if it's hunting and fishing. I've definitely noticed in the past sort of year that my YouTube channel hasn't really attracted that many views, but I possibly also put that down to pandemic and not being able to travel anywhere, which I think my channel was mostly based off, or a lot of my highlight videos were videos that did well were me traveling somewhere and doing something, either going to Norway, shooting halibut, going to Norway, not shooting halibut, dogtooth tuna and things like that. And then I think there's this trend, just particularly YouTube, there's a trend towards shorter form video. People are less attentive. They don't want to watch something unless it's really sensationalized, which I totally get. That's what people want to watch, and that's what it'll prioritize. But I think there's like this survival challenges at the moment is so hot, and I think Strict from Back to Basics did one just out of recently, just out of, I guess, pressure, not pressure, but just like that's what the people want to see, so we'll do it. But they all start the same. Hey, I'm on this island in the middle of nowhere, and I've got no food, but I've got a knife, and I have to survive here for 24 hours solo. It's like, oh, mate, I just get so bored. I've watched a couple and I don't know, they all seem the same. But people probably say the same thing about my videos. It's like, oh yeah, Dan Mann's just going out and shooting a bass in the UK where it's murky and turd and all that sort of stuff.
I wonder if there aren't more nefarious things afoot, to be honest. I think YouTube are definitely a platform that have an ideological
skullduggery, you think?
Yep. And I think, like if when you become a bigger force and a force for good in the spearfishing world, I think all of a sudden you maybe stick your head up and become a target for fringe groups that would possibly report your videos. And YouTube's standards and guidelines have now changed as well with regards to seeing animals be killed in videos and things like that. So I'd imagine if you get a couple of strikes, people reporting your videos for what they perceive as like, harmful videos where you're hurting animals, then that's probably enough for them to delist you or put you down the algorithm, particularly when you've got a big following like you have.
But there's also other channels that do a lot of stuff, like, for instance, Deer Meat for Dinner. That guy did a full flesh out of an alligator, which is a very emotive animal for a lot of people. Not just because it's, whether they're, I believe where this particular YouTube channel was, they're in the Everglades. I think it's quite normal and commonplace to be eating alligator, which totally great, fine, cool, but it's quite a graphic video, and 15 million views, and this channel's got heaps of stuff. So I'm not sure if they're targeting hunting or maybe it's just people aren't interested in the UK spearfishing as much. But yeah, some of the videos that have attracted a lot of attention is just traveling, particularly the Norway videos and the halibut, because I guess at the end of the day, people do like seeing big fish, and the halibut are big fish. So they're fun to make. I'm also, going back in March, actually, I've got a trip planned. I think I've mentioned this on another podcast, the Spear Factor one with Brett, that, I'm going to Norway in March, 2 years ago. I still haven't been to my March trip in Norway. So third time lucky. That'll probably be a pretty cool video, temperature wise and content wise, because I looked up the average air temperature for March where we're going, and it's 2 degrees Celsius. And there's 10 days of that should be rain, and 10 days of that should be snow, and 10 days should be sunshine. And the water is maximum 5 degrees Celsius. So
I'm cold thinking about it.
But think of the photos with all the snow. It'll be a very monochromatic film. It'll be quite, I'm really looking forward to just the challenge of being bloody cold and freezing and trying to dive and manage with all the thick wetsuits and the stuff. I also think other videos people resonate with, particularly I was surprised about, is a video I did to Malta. I went for my wedding anniversary a couple of years ago, and I shot one sargo, but the scenery was stunning, and I did a big hike at the end of it and got down to these abandoned salt baths, and they're just kind of a cliff that's about 10 meters high, and in years gone by, people have carved a set of steps down there. It's the only way to get into the water. And it looked awesome. And I thought, I'm going to shoot something cool here for sure, because it was so hard to get to. And it just went straight down to about 80 meters.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. I think I did a drop to like maybe 28 meters, and I could just see, I could look over the edge and I could just see another step of rock and then another step of rock. And then I looked up and I can clearly see the surface. So that's at least another 30 down that way, if not more. So I didn't shoot any fish there, but I shot one fish and I made a 15-minute video, and I think people really liked it because maybe they go on a holiday as well, and they go for a dive here and there, and they might shoot one little fish and they may not be excited about it, but I was just stoked to be somewhere different, trying to shoot something different. And I quite like that.
Hey Shrek, holy smokes, my big green friend. You guys have been smashing it over there. Every episode of the Noob Spearo podcast is full of actionable spearfishing info. Over here at Spearing Magazine HQ, it's the same, buddy. We just released a massive issue of Women in Spearfishing, and we're ramping up for a holiday buyers issue right now. It's exciting times, and I'm stoked that so many noobers are submitting their adventures, lessons learned, and pictures here at spearingmagazine.com. Just wanted to say that noobers can get an international subscription at spearingmagazine.com. Also, they can check out our In the Face apparel, or get a subscription to the greatest spearing magazine on the planet right here at spearingmagazine.com. Shrek, Love the Noob Spearo podcast. This is Jeremy from Spearing Magazine. Thank you, my friend. Equalizing problems can be something that derail you. Not today, my friend. Go to freedivingfamily.com. Check out either the Frenzel and Advanced Frenzel video or the Mouthful and Deep Frenzel Equalization course at freedivingfamily.com. You can use the code Spearo to get 20% off any course at freedivingfamily.com. These courses are put together by Adam Stern and a select team of legends, and to help you overcome different issues and help you perform better. And some of them are extremely relevant for freedive spearing. Check it out at freedivingfamily.com. Use the code Spearo to get 20% off any course.
I think it comes through loud and clear in your videos. I love the storytelling aspect, and I like the lifestyle component to it. Like, I was talking with someone recently about the Meat Eater. Do you watch Meat Eater on Netflix?
I don't know. No, I don't watch too much telly and stuff, to be honest.
I don't either, but this series appeals to me. Season 10 just came out. The guy that creates Meat Eater, his name's Steve Ranella, and he's got a great attitude towards hunting and towards utilizing all the animal, telling the story, showing the fails, and really getting right into the full lifestyle of hunting rather than just, the cameo reels of kill shots and stuff like that, and some of maybe the more traditional hunting media that people have seen in the past. And to me, like, your YouTube channel is the same thing. It tells the story of it as a whole rather than just romanticizing certain parts of it, holding the fish up for the fish shots. And I mean, they're all great things, but they're a very small part of what we do, And your channel gets a bit more of it. I'd like to see more of the awkward moments and fails.
There's lots of awkward moments and fails, especially when you go start a whole video with a cool introduction and put a lot of effort in, and then you go out and you blank and you think, it gets frustrating, but yeah, it's fun nonetheless. And I still like just making videos because I like making videos about what I'm passionate about. And from traveling to different places, like you're saying about utilizing the whole fish, very spoilt in Australia that most people on a reef trip, for instance, I'm not sure about that one that you just went on recently, and I'm not sure what podcast I was listening to. It might have been the Taz Yarns, possibly.
Yep.
And you were raving about the filleting service. I don't know if that was that podcast, but were they just filleting the fish and then frames go over, or are people taking the wings? Are they taking cheeks? Are they doing all sorts of stuff? Like we
did a mix. We did whole fish, we did fillets, we did all the wings, and then but yeah, there was a mix. People were taking whole fish and everything with bigger head structure and stuff. We were doing some stuff with that as well, but and then we had full cryovac vacuum pack setup, and then ends and.
Certainly not the norm, though, is it? As far as spearfishing trips, when you normally go on, most people just knock the fillets off and go to bed.
Well, the first one I went on, we did take vacuum pack machines, but this time around, like, the system has become that much better. Like, a lot of whole fish going through, wings are getting put in trays, everything's getting labelled, and we had people drying fillets this time before we vacuum packed them, and then they're getting blast frozen. It's like pretty much the best treatment you can have. And I mean, obviously we're using a lot of plastic, but it was just it's just one of those things, I think, if you want to keep fish long term. So
yeah, it's an interesting, I think it's a big shift toward, been a big shift in recent years towards utilizing more of the fish, just as we become more aware of our actions and our consequences of what we do in the underwater world. And I've definitely noticed that in myself, and maybe that's because I'm not shooting as many fish. In Australia, not uncommon to go off Brisbane if you had a nice day, 30 kilos of fish, 2 big pelagic fish, couple of reef fish. It's very easy to do. And even 2 big reef fish. I've shot 2 10 kilo, 9.8 and 9.3, as somebody will remind me, because I've never shot a 10 kilo black spot tuskfish. Yes,
I haven't either.
Timothy McDonald. I've shot one 9.9, 9.5, 9.3, but there's 20 kilos of tuskfish there, and more than likely, all I did was just knock the fillets off and bury the frames or give them to the chooks or something like that. And I just, here I don't have that luxury of shooting that much fish, and even more so that I've seen in Mediterranean countries. I did a 5-day trip with my friend Giuliano, the wetsuit guy from Polo Sub, and it was basically 5 days in a villa in an island called Ponza, which is near kind of where locals go holidaying in Rome sort of thing, one of the spots. And it was just amazing. We would go out spearfishing in the morning if you wanted to get up, and then people would just be lazing around, chatting, espresso, cigarette, etc. And then, you know, we'd go out for the afternoon session. The sun's not going down till 9 o'clock, so you can dive till 9:30 or something like that. It's amazing. And you come back and you just cook everything that everybody's brought back. You got pasta and there's nothing left. You know, that it was all the guts, everything. You know, they cook the livers, they would do the roe, everything that they possibly could, they would utilize on that fish. And I truly believe it's out of necessity, because, I mean, if you just took the fillets off a Dentex there or something like that and threw the frame away, you'd probably be killed, because it's just so hard to get fish there. And yeah, it's probably, if I ever move back to Australia, or when I do, or live there again, it'll be something that I'll have to constantly remind myself of, is to try and utilize fish in a way, it's a bit more sustainable. And I know that's a very, on brand word at the moment, but I have noticed it when I have gone back to Australia. The last time I dived there, 2019, something like that, I went to Moreton. I think I shot 2 fish. I shot a coronation trout and a black spot tuskfish. And I was more than content with just shooting that, because, you see parrots around, see heaps of stuff that you can shoot and eat, but I didn't really need it. And, in 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I would have shot everything, that I could. If it was good eating, I'd kill it. And yeah, maybe that's just one of those things about getting older and stuff. But yeah, I'd like to think it's been the European influence about trying to utilize things and just be a bit more intentional about what you do with your catch.
I love it. Love it. And I think, 99 Spearo Recipes is all about that. Like,
love the segue. When is it coming out? When can we expect it on the shelves? Will it be in the stocking stuffers this year?
By the time this episode is live, that book will be up on Kickstarter. And the Kickstarter campaign is planned to run from November 7 to December 7. And I'm hoping to ship March 2022.
That's quite a way off. So in time for Easter.
Yeah, in time for Easter. Look, these I am having made a few books now, I'm quite aware of the development cycle, and you can make big promises and not deliver. If we get it to people faster, which I'll be aiming to do, that'll be fantastic. But I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. Just like the book, I think it's 99 Spearo Recipes, but there'll be more than 140 in there, and really? some big extra guides. Like caring for your catch. There's a guide to smoking fish. There's all sorts of cool and wonderful things to give people a gateway into some of these bigger cooking techniques. Like smoking fish is a game changer. It is a frigging game changer. Dry aging, another guide in there. It's a game changer. Making a stock out of the bones of a fish, some of these things are overlooked because, like you say, the resource is abundant. So, but it's no excuse really. Like we can do better, and it's more fun too when you use more of a fish. So.
I think, it's definitely better to use more of the fish. And like I just thought then with the stock, that mullet carpaccio that I had and the mullet risotto, the fillets were taken off, and then the entire frame was boiled down to make the stock to feed the risotto rice. So the risotto rice is absorbing that extra flavor, all that umami, and
look at that.
Got to get that word in there.
Yeah.
All that umami, all those lovely flavors into the risotto that you're just not going to get out of a packet risotto. So it's not just it's not for effort. There is a reason to do it. Like it is 100%. Worthwhile. Like even cooking pasta for the people over this side of the world. They'll slit my throat for saying pasta.
Oh, really?
Oh, you're eating the minister at the church. Yeah. Yeah. It's pasta and tacos here in this country.
Oh, wow. Tacos. Are you having tacos, Dan?
Yes, tacos. Yeah, tacos and nachos as well. Not nachos, nachos.
Fish tacos.
People think I'm taking the piss if I say nachos. They think I'm trying to sound posh. Wow. And then that's also another criticism I get on my YouTube channel is my language or accent has changed. But as you know, living anywhere for a long time, what do you say? You're a product of your 5 closest people that you work with, or
average
that
of
you
the
have
5
in your
people.
life?
Yeah, you spend the most time with. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's just easier. I've lived here 6 years. Of course, things are going to change, and I often get that comment on my YouTube channel. Oh, I had a brilliant one. I don't know who it was from.
Posh, Dan.
Someone said, sounding more and more British, ... sadly. It absolutely cracked me up. I just thought this guy, whoever this is, has really got a problem with the way I say words. But
if people want to check out this book we're talking about, it's noobspearo.com/99 recipes. But also check out the Dan Mann YouTube channel. If you're a Spearo and you haven't subscribed, then you're doing something wrong. I was just going to head on out with a passing sort of thing. When I was in China teaching English, I used to teach the Chinese students how to speak Australian. And I said, there's 2 rules. The first rule to speaking Australian is that you need to start your engine before you start speaking. So, hey, how you going? And then the second rule is that there's no space between words. So how are you going literally becomes one word. Hey, how you going? And then I had these Chinese kids saying that back to me like in a group.
Oh, dear.
It was so good.
Oh, dear.
And I said, now you guys.
You're a bad man.
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't teach them any Kiwi stuff because otherwise it'd be derogatory to my own country of origin. So.
Are you not so clued up on the Māori?
Yeah. But, I was there to teach English, not Māori.
Fair enough. I have a little nephew who's born in Auckland, my sister's little boy. It's quite cool how quickly they can pick it up when they're taught from a young age. He can speak a heap of different stuff. It's quite cool. I wish I learned a different language when I was growing up, something other than English. But it's a useful language, though. Everywhere I go, everybody speaks English. Unfortunately, I would love to, except France. When I go to France, they don't really want to speak English a lot of the time. or the worst is when you try and order something at a restaurant in French, and then they just respond in English. And you're like, oh gosh, it's like the ultimate insult.
Yeah, that's
the French. That's the thing about France, isn't it? They know they've got the culture, they've got the history, they've got the landscape, they've got the snowy mountains, they've got the Alps, they've got the wine, they've got the food, they've got the sea, they've got the Mediterranean, they've got the Atlantic for the surf, they've got everything. But the problem is they know it.
Arrogance. It's not.
Well, rightly so. It's a beautiful country. I love it.
All good, brother. Well, we'll head on out. But yeah, thanks again for your involvement with this project and jumping on with me today. Awesome to chat Reelguns and all things Daniel Mann, YouTube spearfishing and world travels. It's always cool catching up with you, bro.
Hopefully there's some more travels on the way for the next 6 months. Now things are opening up here for once in my life. Well, not once, but it's nice to be on this side of the world for a change, to be honest, with the whole COVID thing. It was bad at the start, but now it's good. So hopefully you'll be able to get out and travel some more. So you're very welcome if you ever want to cross off the UK as a spearfishing destination.
I'll add it to the list, 100%.
Right. Way down on the list.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Killshot Spearguns. Ed Martin makes dependable, reliable, simple spear guns that you can rely on. Check him out at killshotspearguns.com. But it's not just me saying it. Have a listen to what this bloke's got to say about it.
Well, I just love Ed Martin's Killshot Spearguns. They just shoot fish all day long.
But it's not just the Americans saying it. He's even sold some spear guns in the UK.
That's right, Shrek. I just love a Killshot spear gun. I've been shooting bass and all sorts of cod and pollock and God knows what down here in the loch and around, and that's the end of my accent, but I love Killshot spear guns. Keep them coming, Ed. And even the Australians are getting in on it. Ed makes a quality, reliable platform. Have a listen to what Stu had to say when I got hold of him last time. Oh, gee, Shrek, I got on to bloody Killshot spear guns last time. I heard you gobbing on about him on the podcast, and I just got on. I wanted a reliable, bloody tough spear gun, so I got on Killshot. I used the code, the bloody noob code there, the noober, on killshotspearguns.com. Got myself an American bit of timber spear gun, and jeepers, mate, this thing is shooting crocs on. It's so bloody good, mate. Don't listen to me about the crocs, though. It's illegal, but I do like to shoot the odd bearer. Get onto him. Get into him. I'm out. See you, mate.
You didn't just hear it from me. Buy American-made performance at killshotspearguns.com. Get $30 off any spear gun when you use the code NUBA on killshotspearguns.com. The struggle is real sometimes to find a spearing buddy. Imagine if there was an app that could connect you with other people that also were looking for a spearing buddy. Well, good news. It's like a Tinder for fishing. We've got the Fishing Trips app available on iOS or Android. Download the Fishing Trips app. Use the code NoobSpearo in there as our referrer and find yourself a buddy, dive safer, and get your mates onto it too with the Fishing Trips app. So we have just finished a mammoth, I think, hour and 20 or hour and 25 minute podcast. It's just pretty typical for me and Daniel's conversation, whether it's a podcast or not. But Daniel was just telling me about his experience with COVID and how it affected him on a personal level, but also in terms of his spearing and freedive fitness. Dan, just tell us a bit of your story, like dirty old UK Delta strain, was it?
I think it was the Delta strain for sure. That was what was going around in the summer here. And I got it at the very start of July. I tested positive, and those lateral flow tests, if you don't know if they're working or not, when you've got COVID, that second line is really dense. It's there. So I got that and isolated for 14 days. I'd been diving heaps earlier in the season, so my dive fitness was really good. I was actually going to go to Sardinia for the World Championships, representing GB, but with COVID, the NHS, National Health Service, told me that I could test positive for up to 90 days with a PCR test. And at the time you needed a PCR test to go to Italy. So I just couldn't really risk the chance of it being 6 weeks away and not being able to, get to the airport and not being able to fly, which would have been a disaster. So I pulled out, which was regrettable because I really would have loved to have dived that competition and got the experience. Would have got my butt handed to me, but nonetheless, a great experience. But I went for my first dive maybe 4 or 5 days after my isolation and symptoms settled down, just like the chest and the coughing and that sort of stuff.
How long did it take to settle down?
Probably, I felt okay maybe after day 12, but it wasn't a linear recovery for me at all. So, I'd get the first 3 days. I felt like I had a man flu, as you describe it. I'd had one jab at the time, and I'd had pretty, I'd say man flu for a couple of days, and then I'd feel okay for 2 days. And then I tried to do some exercise because you're housebound for 14 days. I did exercise on day 6, just, some squats and push-ups and that sort of thing. Floored me. I went to bed for about 4 hours after that. Just any sort of physical work was just crippling for me. Yeah, wow. And the loss of taste and smell, which was very concerning because when you're locked in a house and you have no joy apart from to feed yourself, you can't taste anything. Literally beer tasted like it just had the same sensation of drinking sparkling water. So I found the cheapest lager I could, and further to add insult to injury, I wasn't allowed out of my house. The day, my second last day of isolation was when England was in the Euro Cup final. We lost, but that's okay. And so it was probably a good thing I wasn't at the pub celebrating. And my taste and smell was really affected. I couldn't taste or smell anything for about 3 weeks. Like kimchi, I don't know if you eat kimchi, which is, for people that don't know, it's fermented Korean spicy cabbage. If you open this in one end of your house, you can smell it in the other instantly. It's very pungent. Opened a lid of that, could not smell a thing. I could just eat that all day long and had no effect on taste and smell. Except and then after about a week after I was allowed out of isolation, I thought, I'll go for a dive. And I went for quite an easy shore dive, from what I would consider an easy shore dive, no more than 6 meters deep, this particular reef. And everything was just an effort. It was like I'd just come out of winter with no dive fitness. I was very worried about not being able to hold my breath at all, but I think my first dive was maybe 40 seconds, which is probably on the lower end of what I normally do. Most of my dives are between normally a minute and minute and a half, depending on what I'm doing and the depth. And it wasn't that I felt that struggle of, sometimes if you've pushed it on a dive, you think, oh crap, I've pushed it on a dive. It wasn't that feeling. It was more of this is just an effort and it doesn't come easy. I guess I'd say, like, I don't go to the gym, but I do push-ups fairly often. And, sometimes when a push-up just really feels like a lot of effort, and some days it feels super easy, and everything just felt like an effort to swim. And I came back in and I was just shattered. I shot 2 fish, shot my 2 bass, which was great. But the next dive after that, I think I did another one. I pulled out of it. I was going to do the nationals, but my plan for that one was, swimming 4 kilometers, and I didn't think that would be a wise decision, so I didn't do that one. And yeah, the next dive, just same sort of thing, and it took quite a while, probably I'd say 2 months before I began to feel comfortable and fit again. I run occasionally, maybe like once a week I'll do a 5 to 7 or 8 kilometer run. And even doing one of those just felt like an effort. It took me like 2 days to get over a run. My body sore and stuff like that. So I would not, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody that gets it. And I would just say, if you do get it, make sure you take it easy when you first go out. Don't go trying to do a big dive. Just be cautious and look after yourself. But on the contrary, other people, I know Kevin Daly, he's been on the podcast before. We had a club meeting in end of July or start end of August or something like that. I was starting to feel okay on my dives, and he ended up testing positive a couple of days after. I'm not sure if he picked it up at the club meeting, at the club weekend, camping weekend, but he had a similar sort of thing, very non-linear recovery. One day he was great, next day he wasn't, but his diving recovered. First dive he went out absolutely fine. He dived. He had no problems at all, and he's a fair bit older. Well, shouldn't say a fair bit older. He's about 10, 15 years older than me. So he's in that sort of at risk, getting into the at risk category. So yeah, I guess it affects people in different ways, but for me personally, it was not good. I didn't get to go to Sardinia and lost two of the premier months of diving here. So I wouldn't recommend it.
I saw the recent post you had on Instagram. So it's long, late autumn swims with Kev Spearo on the south coast. I think you said you covered 5 kilometers. So you look like you're buggered. He looks fine.
We had a very romantic sunset swim out last week, actually. Yeah, we swam out to this reef. It's probably about, I think it's 2.2 Ks to the first spot, and then you drift and you come back, and you end up doing a lot of swimming. It's good for you. It's always very daunting at the start of the swim, knowing that there's so much ahead of you. But once you get there and you start seeing fish and hunting, you sort of forget about that, and the swimming's significantly easier.
Oh, I'm the opposite. I love swimming out, and I'm like miles out, and then I go, oh shit, I've got to swim all the way back. That's when the leg cramp kicks in and all the rest of it. But
you don't take water out and that sort of stuff?
To be honest, lately I've been taking Aqualite before I even go out. It's a product that comes out
like a hydrolyte type thing.
Yeah. Well, this one comes out of WA, and they it's made. Well, they sell, I think, predominantly towards high physical labor sort of work in high temp, high humidity areas, and it's bloody gold. Just like does stuff water can't do for you, and so that seems to tide me over pretty well. But I guess it's hard to stay in a decent state of fitness, to be honest, when you work 12-hour days. So sometimes my dive fitness is a bit lacking, I'll be honest. So the big swims are punishing.
It is a bit of a shock to the system when you suddenly just go out and do a 2 kilometer swim on the weekend before. So about 5 days beforehand, I just did the last nationals competition. I did a pretty similar sort of, maybe about 4.5 Ks or something. I covered in the competition, maybe closer to 5. I don't know. And yeah, I was pretty shattered at the end of that as well, but not, I think you have one of those things. I guess it's like when you have I don't know if you ever have a period of time off running or doing any sort of exercise. Say you have a month or 2 off it. The first time back is just brutal, but it seems that your body just accepts it and catches up very quickly. Well, for me anyway, maybe that's just early 30s, but I'm happy with that at the moment. And I also find on those long swims, because we're using a large inflatable sort of float, people think that I should put a motor on the back of it, but it kind of looks like a toy-sized Thundercat almost. And you swim on those, and I can keep the GPS on that. And I quite like looking at it, and I have the GPS, and I've got the marking where I'm going, and it's straight offshore. You don't really need a GPS. Oh, it's handy to have it, but I just like watching it count down. I just 2.2, 2.1, and then when it gets under a kilometer, it's like 937 meters, and I find it quite therapeutic just watching the numbers go down and the clock going up. So it takes about 40 minutes to swim out to this spot, 45 minutes, which seems like a long time, but
it sounds like
fun.
Sounds like a good day. I think that the physical adversity is part of the experience, and when you develop that level of fitness and competence, it's a powerful feeling. Makes you feel strong and good. I like it. Shore
diving there is something about shore diving, shooting a cool fish on shore diving. I remember the first time I shot a big cobia. I think I may have told this story actually. I don't know if you ever remember a guy, Kurt Davis from Adreno back in maybe 15 years ago.
Probably before
marine
my
biology
time.
student. I was supposed to meet him at Kingscliff to go for a shore dive, and I got there, bang on the dot, didn't know what his car looked like or anything, didn't see anyone around the car park. No one looked out on the breakers, couldn't see anyone. And then I called some people, said, do you want to come for a dive that I knew were down on the Gold Coast? And they said, no, we're all busy. I thought, stuff it, I'll go out by myself. Anyway, I saw him out there and he said, oh, we just decided to go earlier because it was, really nice conditions. And anyway, I think fate had its twist that we were swimming back between the third and second bommy, and a massive school of cobia came past, and I shot one, and for some reason his trigger jammed up and he couldn't pull the trigger on any of the cobia that came through. So I think that was a little bit of, bit of karma coming back. Sorry, Kurt, if you're listening. I appreciate you taking photos of me at the end of the day. And I maxed out 24 kilo scales. So I'll just call it a 24 kilo cobia. And I thought on a shore dive, I just thought, it doesn't get better than this. I am legend. It does get better than that, but at the time in my career, it was amazing to do that. And I've shot some cobia 15, 20 kilos afterwards out of a boat, and it just doesn't really have any of the same sort of feeling as doing it on a shore dive and towing that in on a little 11-litre Rob Allen torpedo float through the breakers, getting pulled backwards every time a wave pulls you out because there's a giant cobia as a sea anchor on the back.
Yeah, that's a lot of fish. All good. So COVID now, though, fully recovered?
I'd say fully recovered, yeah. I can, if I'm doing 4 or 5 kilometre swims, it seems pretty good. Depth-wise, in Greece, deepest I dived was maybe 25, 26 metres, so not crazy deep, but certainly deep enough, and didn't have any uncomfortability with that sort of thing. Breath hold was fairly good. As you'd expect in somebody coming from mostly diving in 12 to 15 degrees in a 7 mil suit, suddenly going into a 3 mil suit in 27 degree water. It's kind of like going from Lego to Minecraft.
Good analogy. Love it, Dan. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you've recovered, mate. As usual, a complete gentleman, Daniel Mann. Thanks again for coming on the Noob Spirit podcast. He'll be back again, I'm sure. If you are not already, subscribe to Daniel Mann on YouTube. He makes absolutely awesome videos. In my opinion, he's one of the top spearfishing YouTubers on the planet. It's an absolute honor to get to chat with him and pick his brain about all sorts of different things and talk about, controversial ideas like perhaps this YouTube algorithm change that we were talking about. If you were here a couple of weeks ago for the Adreno Capricorn Bunker Trip Part 1, then you're going to enjoy next week's episode. It's Adreno Capricorn Bunker Trip Part 2. We get to catch up with those guys that were talking about with apprehension about what they were going to encounter on the trip. In this one, we catch up with how their progress has been and dial in on what they've learned and discovered so far and get around. And I talk to a whole bunch of the rest of the crew as well. Again, come back in a week. As usual as well, check out 99 Spearo Recipes. It's available on Kickstarter only for 30 days, guys. So get yourself a hardcover copy. These are advanced copies that you're going to get them before anyone else. They will hopefully be in my hands in February next year, and they will hopefully be in your hands in March next year. But Kickstarter, it's a great way to fund projects you love. Check it out at noobspearo.com/99 recipes, or go to Kickstarter direct and type in 99 Spearo Recipes. All right, guys, I'm over now for today. Thanks for your support. I'm really excited about this Kickstarter campaign. If you can't tell, go to noobspearo.com/99 recipes. 99 recipes. I'm out. Neptonics.com source the very best in spearing gear from around the planet. Jerry says, if we sell it, we believe in it, we trust it, and dive it. Neptonics is a one-stop shop for all your spearfishing essentials. Neptonics is solid gear that works, and you'll know it's true when you pull the trigger on a Neptonics mech, on every snap of a Neptonics power band, and in every whiz of a Neptonics speargun reel, singing with the power of another big fish. Buy gear you can depend on at neptonics.com. Use the code NOOB10 to save 10%. Adreno.com.au, the home of recipes, blogs, videos, equipment reviews, and an obnoxiously large range of spearfishing equipment for frothers like you. Not only that, but spearfishing trips and courses and trips that I sometimes get to go on. Check them out at adreno.com.au. It's a Spearo's best friend. Check them out, and if you want to buy gear, pump in the code NoobSpearo to save $20 on every purchase over $200. You can use that online, in-store. Use the code NoobSpearo, save some cash, and support the Noob Spearo podcast. Shop with adreno.com.au. Manscaped is the best in below-the-waist grooming, designed, in fact, for groin grooming. No more awkward moments with pubes hanging out the side of your budgie smuggler. Ugh. Ugh. Anyway, get 20% off and free shipping with the code NoobSpearo. One word, NOOBSPEARO at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code NoobSpearo. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Your balls will thank you, and so will the girls that have to look at you in a pair of budgie smugglers.